All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Multifamily Movers Podcast, hosted here at South Coast Commercial. I'm going to be the host today, Alexio Barbara. Go by CashFlowAlexio on Instagram, and today I'm introducing the local ADU Geeks, Xavier Rodriguez, and remind me one more time? Frankie Rodriguez. They're not brothers. They just work together and they look alike.
They do. You gotta take the hat off.
There it is. Yeah, same heads. I'll be joining you soon, boys. So anyway, ADU Geeks is a local design company that are essentially architects. They're working with the city to get all these ADU projects and just new ground up construction built out. They've been very successful in central San Diego and really all over San Diego County and getting these projects across the finish line. How long have you guys been in business?
We're going on 4 years now.
4 years.
This January will be our 4th year in business.
And you've been here from the start, right, X?
Yeah. The company was started in formally in 2020, and then I came in about June 2021.
What's your role at the company now, X?
COO. Operations.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. What does that entail?
Just making sure that the machine continues to stay well oiled.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah.
So as long as the machine's well oiled,
the clients are happy.
The clients are happy, and we're able to produce.
Right. What about you, Frankie? What's your role at the company?
His job's to have his hand in everything, literally. I head up the business development department.
Okay. And so that's finding new clients in need and new business?
Yeah, everything client facing, talking with clients, talking to them about the feasibility studies, what the options are, what they can do on their property, and then, just going to meetups, building business, and just spreading the gospel about ADUs.
Cool. Well, I can attest. I mean, I've been working with you guys for 3 years on one of probably the hardest projects that's come across your desk, converting 5 single-car garages to 5 studio ADUs east of downtown. And I think one of the biggest challenges was it was one of the first that was a multi-garage conversion, and the city didn't know what to do. You guys were trying to figure out what would actually pass, what would be required, and we've hit pretty much every obstacle in the process. But I think we've all learned a lot, and we've all, at the end here, I've just moved some tenants in, and I'm hoping to be fully across the finish line in the next month or so. And I can say one thing, things don't go as planned on every project. You guys probably see something new, and there's some sort of delay, and some of that's on the city, and some of that is from learning something new, that it's a new requirement. But every step of the way, you guys have stood by my side, offered resources to get this across the finish line. You didn't leave me in the dirt, so I really appreciate that. That said, you've come a long way probably from starting on small ADU projects. What's the biggest project you guys are working on now?
The biggest one that we're working on right now just came in, another one just came in, the size was 22 ADUs. 22 ADUs in...
22 ADUs.
Yeah, I believe it's the North Park area. Working on 22 ADUs right now. We're just started the design process. Yeah, and then there's another one that just got signed a couple of days ago for 18 ADUs. Over the time from when we started, I think yours was the biggest amount of ADUs we've had. Mm-hmm. But now we're getting 16, 20, 22.
Right.
So far, it's the biggest one.
Okay. For a lot of people, they're thinking, wow, that ADUs, I thought this was one in my backyard. So how do you go beyond? I mean, I heard the rule was 1 or 2 ADUs in your backyard. How are people getting to 22 ADUs? How does that look like in terms of limitations and affordability standpoint?
There's a lot of rules that exist out there, especially City of San Diego specific. Mm-hmm. Anything out of City of San Diego is not as progressive. Mm-hmm. So there's some limitations there that looking into the code and working with people like us, we'll be able to get you, hey, this is where you should be able to land at. Right. But using the bonus ADU program.
Okay.
Bonus ADU program.
What is that?
So the bonus ADU program is a program where the city incentivizes the developers to build more housing. We need more housing. So here, this is a program they put together that allows you to use different parts of code to allow you to achieve X amount of ADUs based on your floor or area ratio. Your lot size, let's say it's 1,000 square feet is your lot size. For every zone, there's a FAR, right?
FAR, yeah.
An FAR, which is floor area ratio. So based on that FAR, I can max you out all the way to, let's say you have 1,000 square foot lot. Currently you're utilizing 25% of it, but I can go all the way up to like 75% of that. Mm-hmm. So I can build X amount of ADUs until I hit that 0.75.
Okay,
That makes
0.75. I believe it's call it 0.75 FAR on a 1,000 square foot lot. That means you can build 750 square feet.
Correct.
Realistically, San Diego, let's call it a 10,000 square foot lot. That's 7,500 square feet.
Correct.
And in that, I think each ADU, was there a max on a single ADU size, and then thereafter you have a junior, and then potentially bonus, affordable, something like that?
Yeah, if you're on an RM lot, you're zoned for multifamily. You get your 2 by right. Your third, that becomes your affordable ADU.
Okay.
Which unlocks your fourth one, which is your market rate ADU, and you keep doing that nonstop until you hit your FAR.
Okay, got it. So that's how these people are getting up to 22 ADUs. How big is that lot, if you don't mind me asking?
The one I believe is 14,000,
14,000?
I believe.
Okay.
Not entirely sure, but I know it's definitely up there.
Probably doing micro or smaller units so that they can max the unit count, but stay
Exactly.
within that FAR.
Exactly. So there's creative ways to do that. Micro units, all different types of unit types. But it's also important to note that we can also go vertical, right? So some lots are zoned for more than 1.0, right?
Okay.
So this one in particular, I believe is 1.35.
Okay.
Far, which means like, hey, where does the 0.35 come from?
Yeah.
That's vertical.
Okay, yeah. Got it. Yeah, exactly. You can't expand wider.
For sure.
Interesting. So I hear a lot, people are asking, they're talking about complete communities and ADUs. Do they work together, or are they kind of two separate avenues to achieve higher density?
They're definitely two different avenues. Complete communities is a little bit more complex on getting to, you can definitely build much more than a bonus program because there's more provisions that allow you to. The only thing is that there's some obstacles that you have to go through in order to, the ADU program is
More streamlined?
more streamlined than they've streamlined the community, because most investors, I won't say most investors, but you need more capital to build complete communities than compared to using the ADU bonus program.
Right, and that's because you can't use anything existing for complete communities. You have to kind of start ground up versus ADUs, or am I wrong there?
You could go ADUs, you can do brand new as well, but
Usually ADUs, though, are paired with like an existing
Correct,
structure,
correct.
and then you're building more and back or converting garage space. Is complete communities the same way? Can you keep that fourplex there and then build a 20 unit next to it, or are you, in that situation, are you usually scraping and building?
You're scraping just to maximize.
Okay, and then in what situation would someone on a 14,000 square foot lot consider doing 22 ADUs versus 22 complete communities? Where do they draw the line to make that distinction of which avenue they should take?
Yeah, I think it just totally depends on the team, right? Whoever the investor is. If they're a group, what their ultimate goal is. If it's just, what's the fastest, most streamlined way to get this done with the biggest return on their investment, then they're probably going to go the ADU route.
Right.
If the goal is ultimately just a bigger development that's, really involving the community and doing something on a larger scale that way, then that's probably the route they would go.
Okay.
And I think complete communities too is like there is more restrictions compared, you have to follow setbacks, you have to follow all that stuff. Where ADUs it's more right to the 4-foot setback. There's more things you can do with the ADU process.
Okay, so that allows you to intrude on the setback more.
Exactly.
Versus complete communities has another set of rules and regulations that limit it in other ways.
Correct.
Okay, interesting. I know a lot of people are interested in what it takes to build an ADU, and that timeline has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. What's it like today, and what was it like in 2020? Can we compare what's changed, and how long does it take to build an ADU project today?
Yeah, so I'm here to say that is definitely has improved drastically in the city of San Diego. In the past, just to intake the project in the city of San Diego, it would take 60 days.
And that's back in COVID days,
That's
2020.
COVID days,
Yeah.
right? That's just to intake the project, right?
And what does it take today for intake?
24 hours.
Wow.
Drastic difference.
Well, you would think that to intake a project, it shouldn't take more than 24, 48 hours. So 60 days, what is going on over there? But I'm happy to hear that they've figured that out. So what are the steps? We're intaking a project, reviewing a project, submittal, review, Why don't you go into the process and then timelines?
Yeah, for sure. So the intake process for the city of San Diego, anywhere from, it takes 24 hours. And that's just so you, to understand what intake means, that's just them reviewing that the plans have everything that is required at a minimum. And then any other documents that are required to be submitted with that water meter data card, a couple other things like that. Once they deem the project complete, they provide an invoice. Once you process that invoice.
And that's city fees, things like that?
City fees, correct. That's kind of like the initial
School
invoice that gets
fees,
you
yeah.
going. The review cycles right now, if you don't have MEP, 26 business days.
Sounds pretty fast.
Yeah, they're coming back so fast. They're coming out before, we submit a couple plans today, and they just still come staggered, right? 1 in 3 weeks, 1 in 6 weeks, et cetera, depending on the size of the project. Now they come all at once, like 15 projects.
You guys are like, we can't even keep up anymore. We got to get some more people on staff.
They're putting it back on us now. Like, we're not following anymore. So
hey, that's good to hear, because that's how it should be. Because I like being able to control, at least. If the ball's in your court, you can control it. What's demoralizing, in my experience anyway, of the last 3 years, is that the ball sits in the city's court for so long, and you can't even call. You can't walk into the office. You can't talk to someone. You just hope someone hasn't forgot about your project, and then 3 months later they finally email you back, and you email them right away, and you wait another 3 months. Yeah. It's it's really hard to have correspondence, get business done that way. So now it's great to hear that they're turning things back in a reasonable time frame.
Right.
Now, what do you think has changed at the city level to? What's changed since 2020? Why are things better now? Maybe Frankie, you want to answer?
Yeah, well, the city's realized that they have a shortage of people, so they've done a lot of different things to outsource, city planners and people to help them with all the review comments. Correct me if I'm wrong. They even have private companies that they've hired
to help with review.
To review certain disciplines, of the plans.
Wow. Well, that's awesome.
Really, structural usually is the most difficult part, right? And you have to find structural engineers. They have to find structural engineers to review those plans, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what I've seen that a lot of, not only City of San Diego, but other jurisdictions, they've also outsourced it to companies to just handle that portion of it because it's the most time consuming and that's what's backed up the most. So they outsource that out, and then they just review like zoning, planning, things like that are just a little bit easier to get through.
Right. Well, very cool. So that said, what is a timeline for getting your permits, start to finish? I call ADU Geeks. Hey, I want to build a project in my backyard. I want to build an ADU and a junior. How long is it going to take me from the day I make that phone call to where I have a project that's approved, and then likely what it will take to build it out?
So I think it really, obviously it depends, right? It depends on the scope of the project, depends on if we're doing a garage conversion or if we're doing, 15 ADUs in a yard. But typically the design, so there's kind of 2 phases or 3 phases as we call them. So the first milestone, if you will, is where the client gets to meet their project coordinator and their designer. So because the city's getting a lot more efficient and putting it back on us, on the designers, then we answered in fold and we continue to hire. So we've built out a fully robust operations team. I think we're at 42 right now. 42 total employees. And that's a combination of designers, project coordinators, the business development staff upstairs. But the bulk of that staff is all in operations. So each project gets a dedicated project coordinator and designer team. So as these review comments are moving through the city, we're turning them around, answering them, and getting them right back. That's awesome. At more efficient than we've ever had before. But to answer your question, so step 1 is the client gets to meet their project coordinator, designer team, and they get an idea of what the scope, what the idea is here. What's your goal? What's the vision? The designer starts going to work, putting that schematic together. Depending on the complexity of the design, the schematic can usually be done within a month to 6 weeks. Then, pending the client being happy with that, right? Because if the client's wanting to change and review several times, well, that's going to cause some delays. Client says, okay, thumbs up to their initial schematic, then we move into construction development, right? That should take us another 6 to 8 weeks, again, depending on scope. Larger projects take a little more time.
So we're about 4 months in now?
So we're about 3 to 4 months in now. We've got plans ready to submit in the city. Okay. We're looking at typical turnarounds anywhere from 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months. 6
to 9 months. So total turnaround time, I think, a very conservative yet pretty accurate, right around a year.
Right around a year.
Right around 1 year. And that's designs, plans, and permits in hand.
What is different about the timelines for ground up ADUs versus conversion of existing space, like a garage?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Some municipalities are way faster than others, especially when it comes to what you're talking about now. When there's no structural components being changed, in the case of a garage conversion or some type of conversion of existing habitable or non-habitable space, those tend to move faster through the review cycle. Again, because there's no huge structural component to them. We're not modifying the existing structure. We might be moving or putting up some, one wall, but those tend to move faster.
When the clients come, we had a client that came to us. This is exactly what I'm looking for. We were able to get his plans in the city in 3 weeks for a garage conversion, and I was just happened to pop in our email, and I saw that everybody approved except structural. So, and they just a couple minor comments that I looked at, and this guy's project might be approved in like next month.
Wow.
Right, so that's
really
almost
fast.
2 months.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's
Between
awesome.
design and permitting. The more important thing is the more prepared the client is on the easier and the easier it is for us to work together and have some be in sync and be able to get these plans into the city faster. Because now for a garage conversion or something that's just converting existing space is moving even faster.
Okay, yeah.
We've seen a lot of those lately too. We've been just building a lot of relationships with a lot of folks in kind of that middle market kind of arena where they've got these 15 25 unit apartment complexes with all of these either detached or attached garage spaces underneath where there's plenty of clearance, and a lot of these owners are looking at unique value adds to their properties. So we're seeing a lot of these garage conversions coming around now.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that I'm also noticing, once we move into multifamily, that's when your problems arise. Really? That's when you're dealing with CBC, California Building Code, which is anything more than 3 units, which your occupancy changes from an R2 to from an R3 to R2, which means that's when you need fire sprinklers, ADA compliance.
This would be commercial. This is where you have MEP.
Exactly.
So what triggers MEP?
So what triggers MEP is anything after when you have a structure, a building that has 2 or more units.
More than 2 units or 2 units?
More than 2.
Okay.
So once you hit the 3, you need you're at number 3. That's when you move on to a CBC. You have to follow CBC code, which means you need mechanical, electrical, complete plans. You need fire sprinklers. You need comply with some ADA requirements.
Fire alarm and alarm monitoring.
All that silly stuff they require, right?
You've heard of this.
Where CRC is residential code, which is more lenient. You don't need fire sprinklers. You don't need all that good stuff, right? That CBC requires you. And what I've been noticing is that those projects that have 2 or less, they're moving so much faster through the process because you don't have to deal with all these huge requirements that you have yourself been through.
Right. Well, I think another big part of it has nothing to do with the city or design, and that's SDGE.
Correct.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about that because you get your project approved in 2 months. You want to build it out. It's going to take you 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
How long could SDGE meet that time frame? What
are you seeing with them right now?
We try to be as proactive as we can in getting SDGE involved as quickly as possible, getting those work orders requested because they're averaging 6 months to turn around and come out and do some upgrade that they needed to a panel, right, to get the amperage, from 100 to 200 or 300 or whatever it is. So if for whatever reason that doesn't get caught until later on in the project, or
start that timeline way too late, you're just going to be sitting there idle twiddling your thumbs.
I will tell you there's ADUs in San Diego right now that are sitting unoccupied just waiting for someone from SDGE to come and do what they need to do. So
I'm sure those owners understand though. They're probably they're okay with it.
Oh yeah, totally fine. I don't need an occupancy.
I had a problem on my project that was, I guess it wasn't even really, to some degree, is SDG&E related, but it's I had to get a new panel, and getting meter panels, especially if it's not one of the standard 2, 3, 4 unit, I had to get an 11 meter panel.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Xavier was helping me. I was begging anybody in town to give me the panel that met the specs of this SDG&E work order. And the problem, I think, is SDG&E doesn't give you that. They won't even get out of bed and start writing you a work order until way late in the process. Right. It takes you in some cases, like over a year to make this order for this new panel? Because it's, I don't know, manufactured specific for your project. It has to meet all your individual custom specs, and that's made, I imagine, overseas, and especially with the last couple of years, there were the supply chain issues. I mean, has it gotten any better? I mean, these panels are still taking forever to arrive, aren't they?
Yeah, I think from my understanding, it has been like the form, like once you get to like those larger numbers, those are the ones that have been delayed. It's definitely important to start early in the process, right? Once we changed our process where we submit SDGE as soon as we submit plans, so we do it together. The thing with SDGE is that you have to be proactively reaching out to them, calling their office, and it's time consuming, but that's just what it is.
Talking to their project coordinators, all that stuff.
Just being.
And do you guys do that, or is that on the client?
So we take a part of that, right? We'll submit your ticket. We'll get, we try to get all the way to the end. Once we get like the documents needed for the contractor, then the client is their job to turn that over to the contractor. Then the contractor got it from there.
And that would be like them. Then the contractor takes over correspondence with this SDGE
Correct.
Building Services and
Correct.
make sure that they're coming out and doing the checks and making those phone calls. I think what I just realized on another project by San Diego State that I'm working on, they said something like SDGE Building Services are like, you have to submit the ticket because it's at least 6 months before they'll even come and look at your project and do the site visit.
So
and that's like the same thing we were talking about earlier with the city delays. I mean, this is outside of the owners or the ADU contractor's control. That's just a delay that SDGE is putting on you. And why do you think they have that delay? Is it because they don't have the resources, or is it because there's more urgent matters in front of yours? Have you looked into that?
I think it goes back to just resources. They don't have the manpower to process the amount of demand they're getting. I spoke to one of their contractors, and she says she has over like 250 tickets to one person.
And maybe you can get like 3 or 4 done in a day, realistically. Like if you're hustling, you're talking about 100 days to get caught up.
It's just too much for her, right? And they just don't have the manpower, so they just keep piling up. And they're trying to find the manpower, but
Maybe they gotta take a note from the city and outsource.
Yeah, absolutely. They should probably. I mean, it is a private organization, so they have more. They have more control over a government, a government facility.
Okay. Well, I asked this question to everybody who comes on the podcast, and I think it applies to every industry, and yours in particular. You have a lot of owners who you've worked with who are really happy, and you have a lot of times where you work with them and there's a lot of bumps in the road. You're doing your best to navigate them, but I'm sure that there's been some situations where someone's decided to go a separate way, or the business relationship didn't work out. Here I always preach good business. What does good business mean to you in your industry?
I guess I would say good business to us means always trying to make it right. We're in development, design, construction. There's always that, what I call X factor. We start digging in your yard and we find a dinosaur bone, all bets are off, things change. There's always changes to municipal code. There's always something new that's going to arise. One of our core values as a company is transparency. So the first thing is, if it's our fault, then owning it, and then just communicating that to the client, and then doing whatever we can to follow through with our commitment to make it right with them. Right? And that might look different for some clients. I can think of stories where there was a client that, for whatever reason, early on in the company's history, somehow, some way, someone missed the fact that this 2-story project just wasn't going to work because there was an electrical power line going through the yard. And this is through permit.
Late in the process.
Late in the process. So now
and this is not only you guys, the city overlooked this as well.
Right, so there's a combination of a bunch of folks that kind of missed this thing. Us being one of those people that had to own some of that. The long story short is that we made it right with the client. We redesigned this thing into a 1-story unit. It's a beautiful unit. It's renting out well for the client. And the good news story of it is he was really upset. I mean, the client was mad, and rightfully so. We made it right. And I know we made it right because 3 months later, that client came right back. He bought the unit right next door and is now building 2 more ADUs with our company, even after this long, arduous headache of a problem. And that's because we built the relationship. He saw the growth in the company. He saw the throughput. He saw the vulnerability in us being willing to say, yeah, here's where we are. Here's what we want to do to get this for you.
Yeah, here's where we messed up, and here's how we want to make it right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what good business is to me.
Right. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for us is just we're gonna make mistakes. We're not a perfect company. For every project, it's important for us to do lessons learned, right? And then do workshops around that and work with our team. Like, hey, what could we done better? Where we failed at? So like that, we can. The entire team now is informed of whatever change occurred or the mistakes we made, so that it doesn't occur again.
Checks and balances, things like that.
Exactly. Checks and balances in place so that doesn't occur. But really, the most important thing for us is like what Frankie mentioned, is transparency. Hey, we screwed this up and we're going to make it right, whatever that is. And, that's what we want to do. Even if the client doesn't decide to come back with us, we want to make sure that they when they walk away from ADU Geeks, that they know that we did all we could to make it right.
Right. And I think that's huge. Like what you just said there at the end is like, we're all human. We all make mistakes. And whether they're going to be happy at the end of this project or not, I just want to, you want to walk away knowing that you've done everything you can within your power to, right any wrongs. So, at the end of the day, if they're still unhappy, that's on them. At least you can sleep at night knowing you've left on the best terms possible within your power. So that's those are great answers. I haven't heard those ones yet. So, I know a lot of people in San Diego are worried about parking with ADUs. What is on the docket, and what is the solution? How do we create more housing and also satisfy the people who want to have more parking?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I don't.
Is there an answer?
I don't think there is. Honestly, I think there is a housing shortage, not a parking shortage, and I know many would debate that. I have a driveway and a garage, so I probably am not the best person to ask this question to.
Where do you live?
I live in Otay Ranch. My wife and I, we have a house in Otay Ranch.
Well, that's understandable because you're not in the mid-city or next to a growing downtown area.
And that's my point. In order for me to get anywhere, I got to drive there. If I lived in a more dense area where the location was ideal because things were within walking distance, then I decided to kind of do that. Right?
Maybe like cities around the U.S., like in Chicago, New York, that have already been through this crisis and have naturally evolved into this, one that revolves around more public transit. I think, so there's the flip side of that coin, I think we need better public transit. Have you guys been in talks with like Sandag or anybody who's tried to improve these other systems to compensate for the lack of parking?
Yeah, nobody that we're speaking to directly. The laws are very clear. Typically for most ADUs in most municipalities, parking is very rarely required unless they're in a residential area typically where there's no public transit available. And it's just the fortunate, depending on who you ask, part of development and really increasing density to supply the housing that's needed.
I was thinking today, actually, we were talking about it in our meeting. I've been to Barcelona in Spain, and there they have kind of a similar thing. I mean, that city was beautifully designed. If you've seen pictures, aerial photos, it's like a perfect grid with like a diagonal street coming across. But parking was never, people walk everywhere. There are streets and there are cars. But I know my friend who lives in Barcelona, instead of having a parking spot in front of his house, because no apartment, it's not an option for any apartment, there aren't parking spots, there's only street parking. For him, they have one block that's dedicated to a parking structure that all the surrounding blocks are using for, rent a space. So I was thinking, for example, North Park, we have the water tower, which has been condemned, and they're trying to decide what to do with it. What if they took that entire block and did like an 8-story parking structure? Wouldn't be. There's ways to make them pretty. Never going to be beautiful. But then you have this parking structure that people for 3 blocks in either direction or 4 blocks, wherever they can walk to, and still have a place where they know they can park their car at night that's secure. I think that might be an alternative to blocking housing projects due to lack of parking.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. There's some place actually, as you say that, in Otay Ranch, there's a lot of development going on, but there is some of the denser development where they did just that. They have one huge structure inside of a bunch of other,
right?
And that's just where everyone parks. Yeah, like condo projects, but it looks very nice and suburban, But you're right. There's nothing but street parking to the naked eye because there's just one
Right.
central parking.
We got to get one of these Norwegian designers to come in and make a ski ramp out of the top.
Yeah. Well, I heard flying cars are going to be a thing too. So that's
I'm excited. Maybe if Musk has anything to say about it, I'm sure it will.
But no, I have. I'm constantly hearing podcasts and reading about different things like ride sharing, and not just Uber or Lyft, but actually where you just kind of park that vehicle, kind of like they do with the scooters, just with cars.
Right.
So they're exploring with all kinds of different.
Also with the Teslas or these future of self-driving, I imagine it's on the horizon eventually.
Yeah.
But imagine if you pull up to your house and say, okay, go park yourself wherever this parking structure is, and you just your car goes and parks itself somewhere, and then when you need it, you just call it back like a dog.
Yeah, I don't think that's far in the future.
For the listeners who are furious about parking, hopefully someone here comes up with a creative solution that provides a light at the end of the tunnel that will still allow us to create housing, because like you said, we have a housing shortage which supersedes a parking shortage in my opinion. I know developer Rami, he's a big advocate for saying house people, not cars. Right now we've got a lot of people on the streets and it's a humanitarian crisis, and the fact is rents are getting out of control. The only way to combat this, no other solution has long-term lasting effects. The only way to combat it is through creating more housing and keeping up with the demand. Absolutely. And unfortunately, for the people who lived in these mid-city neighborhoods, it's a growing city. Our population's going up. We're booming. San Diego's on the map. We're the second most expensive city to live in the U.S. now. And part of that's because we've had such restricting building requirements for so long. And I think we're trying to play catch up now, and we desperately need to catch up in order to keep housing affordability where at a reasonable level, and also help combat the homeless crisis. And on that note, in closing, ADU Geeks here, you guys are on the forefront of creating housing in San Diego and helping us on that front. And it sounds like you've come a long way as a company. And I hope you can help a lot of our listeners build out projects or just provide information. So really appreciate you both coming on the podcast. Again, we have Xavier Rodriguez and Frankie Rodriguez of ADU Geeks today providing insight. Thank you for coming on the show, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.